Hey everyone, welcome to our third and final review for Spark of the Everflame. I am Travis, co-founder of Apropos Book.
And I am Jamie, the other co-founder.
All right, so we finished the book this last week. And I'm pretty sure, Jamie, you said you finished the last third of it in one sitting.
I sure did. I ate that up. Now I wish, and I think my issue overall was the pacing we read at, because I loved the last third of the book. And I think that could have been where I was struggling, because I have these questions, and every time I read a book, it's like I don't usually have a pacing. I just read. So usually I do it in 2 to 3 days. So yeah, I think that's where, but I did enjoy having predictions along the way to find out I was totally wrong about the whole thing.
Yeah, I was kind of the same way. I read it in a couple days. But I feel like it kind of like snowballed after a certain point. It was just getting to that point, and I almost felt like, and I don't know if so the foreshadowing to me, I'm wondering, was it good enough, or was it just subtle enough? Because the revelation at the end of the book, it wasn't like, what the fuck? It was like, oh wow, I didn't see that, but it also didn't not make sense, Yeah. So, the fact that it wasn't even on my radar as a possibility, I'm like, the foreshadowing must have been subtle enough, because it also wasn't something that was like, no, that would never have happened, So she did set it up enough in the beginning to know that could have happened.
It was a blip on my radar, like briefly, but I kind of just pushed it away. But like when they were in the King's Chamber, her and Luther, and the Gryvern was there, and she was like trying to touch it, I was like, I wonder. And then I was like, nah, that's just stupid. Like, I couldn't possibly be right about that.
That does make sense. And if I had been paying a little bit more attention, I think, to the way the Gryvern was acting, it always did seem to act up when she was around.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess that there was some foreshadowing I just never really picked up on.
Yeah.
And was never like, oh, I wonder.
I was thinking, the way the king, when he woke up and reacted to her, I didn't think that. I thought that she was some like destroyer thing, especially with the scene with like her and Luther and the flashback. And I was like, are they like on opposite sides at some point, and they're having some past memory? Yeah. So there's still questions, and I'm still curious about what happens. And I am going to read the rest of the series because I want to
know. I'm on the fence about reading the rest of the series. I didn't dislike, like, it's one of those things that I probably will pick up somewhere down the line. But it's not one of those things where I feel like I need to tear into the second book. But the way that book one ended was good enough that I would continue the series.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, had I not been reading another book, I would have picked up book 2 almost immediately. But I want to finish the series I'm on, and then I'm going to go back to Spark and finish that up, because it did leave me like wanting to pick up book 2, and like usually that's the good setup, because it's not quite a cliffhanger, but it's like, holy shit. And then you know the whole epilogue with her mom and everything, so I'm like,
right,
that.
Yeah, the epilogue with her mom kind of, like, I'm curious now, because it's like, is her mom really part of the resistance, and are they now going to be on opposite sides?
I don't think she is, because the way Luther talked about her, I think he knows what's going on with her. And with the way Henry's acting, it didn't lead me to believe that her mom had any part of that. So I think there's something her mom is privy to that she's not. I mean, obviously, because her mom knows who her father was.
You know, so it's for me, if she's not part of the resistance, it's like, what is she doing for the king and Luther?
Mhm.
Because, you know, she was like, oh, the king is dead. It's time in 1 month. It's time for me to go back.
Yeah.
So it kind of makes me wonder, if she's not part of the resistance, what does Luther and the king have her doing that, you know, his death would be her sign to come home?
Yeah. So yeah, those are some of the things that like just drive me to want to read more. So I can figure that out, because it's puzzles like that that keep me going in books, and I like it when I can't accurately predict things, and it's like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Yep. Yeah, I normally, this one, I didn't pick up on the foreshadowing, but there's times that, most of the times when I'm reading, I can pick up on something. So if I can't, I'm like, oh, or if I pick up on it and it's like so bonkers that even though I was correct, like, wow, that really blew me out of the park. Yeah. I think only a few books have really pulled the wool over my eyes, and you know, this one obviously it did, because I didn't see that coming. Another one was like Jim Butcher Dresden Files, like constantly blindsiding me. And just like you, I love it when a book is able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So as part of our final wrap up, we have questions that we're going to ask each other. And probably the way that we'll do it is ask one question and we can both weigh in on it.
Okay.
So theme exploration. What were the main themes of the book, and how were those themes brought to life for you?
God, I probably should have looked at these before. I thought about it in more in depth. Main theme, I'm not even.
So for me, the only real theme that I picked up on, and I'm sure that there's others, and themes are like so different for everyone. Like what the author just determines as a theme is, you know, could be different to.
Yeah, it's always like an interpretation.
Yeah. So for me, the theme was like duty and responsibility. And it was something that you saw her struggling with through her mother expected her to be a healer. So that's what she did. People expected this of her. They expected her to be part of the rebellion. And it was a lot of her fighting against other people's expectations. And then at the end, finally choosing. And you can see a little bit of that agency showing up with her throwing out the flame root.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that makes a lot of sense, actually, because even like her commitment to wanting to change and thinking being a guardian was the way. And this is probably going through part of the next part, but one of the pivotal changes was seeing the bombing happen and her being like, that's not the way to do this.
Yeah.
And like reframing her whole mindset, like that's not me and that's not the approach that, you know, I find to do this, because why her innocence when there could be another way to do this and do it better. I feel like that was a little bit of foreshadowing too about her becoming the queen at the end, and you know, like her talking to Luther about what she felt was the king's failings as, you know, the king, and how, you know, some of the rulings that he made didn't make sense for, you know, the people, but it always seemed to benefit the descendant. So, yeah, I feel like her, yeah, I think you're right with the whole duty aspect of it, because, you know, that also works into that. And that was a major like pivot for me when that scene happened.
Yeah. So some of these questions don't exactly make sense, so I'm not going to do all of them. But writing style, what did you think of overall the writing style?
I actually liked it. It was, you know, she has a very flowy, easy to read style of writing, so that didn't make it, you know, complex or hard for me to dig into. The world building also wasn't over the top and I wasn't confused or like constantly having to go back and reread things because I didn't understand what's happening. I thought that pacing made it even, better. There were certain character quirks though, but that has nothing to really do with the writing style. But overall, yes, I liked the writing style and thought the structure and the pacing were really good.
I agree with that. The one thing, occasionally I felt like some of the dialogue was a little strange. Like maybe it felt a little juvenile, or there was something just slightly off, but not off enough that I can point my finger at it and be like, this is why I didn't like it. So overall, the writing style, for me was good. It wasn't difficult to read. It wasn't long, verbose passages that you really had to slog through. So how did the book make you feel? What emotions did it evoke?
Jesus, I just had this. It made me curious. And there was a little, at the beginning, it was a little bit predictable with the, what was going on and how she was acting. But then obviously, as it went on, there was a little bit of shock and awe factor. You're like, whoa. Because, I didn't see that coming at the end. So,
I remember, I don't know if I really had like specific emotions throughout the book, but I do remember like in the last like line when the crowning happened, I was like, okay, I didn't see that coming. So it was a little bit of surprise at the end, which is, always good. Memorable quotes. Do you have any quotes that were memorable and stuck out to you?
I really don't.
I think
I'm
the
so
only
bad when I'm reading these, like normally I go through and I highlight things that I want to come back to, and I did not do that with this one.
There weren't like any memorable, like, oh, that quote really resonated deep with me. But the one quote that made me laugh was when she was standing outside the card game and the guy was wearing that feathered hat, and he asked her if he looked stupid to her. And she said, "Have you seen your hat?" That kind of made me laugh because it was a type of sarcasm that I think would have played in my head if someone had asked me that in the situation. But other than that, no, that was the only real quote that stuck out to me. Let me see. Rating. What would you rate the book on a scale of 1 to 5? Now, just so everyone understands, our ratings are, we can run through that a little bit. My 1 is did not finish it. 2 was I didn't like it, it's close to a DNF, but actually finished it. I wouldn't continue or recommend. 3 is on the fence with whether I would recommend it or not. 4 is, oh, this book was really good. I'm definitely going to read it all the way through. And 5 is, I'm obsessed.
Yeah, my 1 is a DNF as well. 2 was I forced myself to finish it but wouldn't recommend it. 3 is typically it's a middle of the line. I may or may not finish the series. 4 is I liked it enough, and I would recommend. I would finish the series. 5 is I would recommend and potentially reread the series at a later point. But for me, I'm going to rate this one a 4. I want to finish the series. The ending got me excited. The fact that I sat through the entire third of a book and finished that in a couple hours, it speaks volumes to the ending, and the ending really did kind of wow me. So want to finish it.
I think before the ending, my rating would have been a lukewarm 3. But with the ending of the book, it was a pretty solid 3. Now, I mean, the caveat there is that, this isn't my typical genre. So, but yeah, 3, I liked it enough. At some point I'll finish the series. But it's not one of those things I'll probably pick up right away. All right. So now that we actually liked, gave our rating, What character did you feel most connected to, and how did they reflect something personal for you?
Luther. I'm gonna say moody and broody. No, I just, whenever he was in there, the interaction was always just elevated to a different level than it was with Diem and anyone else. And I feel like they brought things out of each other. So the dynamic between them, overall, like Diem with Luther was a different person than Diem with her family or Diem with Henry. So
Yeah.
I liked her with him, but not in many of the other scenarios. And I think that had to do with, it could have, and this could be some of her character growth, is like how juvenile she started off acting and where she ended up. So I'm interested to see like how she's going to continue to develop now that she's actually the queen. But yeah, for now, solid Luther.
For me, I think it was her brother. Like, I loved the banter back and forth between her and her brother, and though he wasn't in it that much, you know, it did allow you to see a side of her that, like with Luther, you didn't see with many other people. Because I felt like different people within the book represented different aspects of what she was going through. And her father was definitely the responsibility. And her brother, I think, made her feel more genuine. Like, she felt less guarded around him. Mm. So what about character motivations? Did the characters' motivations feel clear and compelling? Whose decisions drove the story in the most impactful way?
Obviously, Diem. Yeah, a lot of this was like watching her change her mind through the entire thing, which, you know, emphasizes the growth that she's going through. But I think like the biggest decision was closer to the end, where she, you know, she knows that there needs to be change, but she doesn't agree with how either side is handled yet.
Yeah.
So
yep.
I think she's going to be like the bringer of change and like reform.
Yeah. So I felt as though the author did a really good job with, you know, Diem, though she wasn't always, she seemed like sometimes she was trying to be stronger than she was. She did have pretty good agency. So she did really drive the plot, where a lot of, no, I can't say a lot, but, you know, some authors rely more on situations pushing the story forward. I feel like she really was the one that pushed the story forward, even if a lot of those things were accidents out of, you know, stupidity or pigheadedness, because there was quite a bit of that. But yeah, I think that, you know, Diem, not just because she's the main character, but she's really, besides Henry and Luther, the only other person we see on screen a lot throughout the book. So did the characters feel true to life to you?
I would say, I guess, yes, considering the life that Diem led, I could see her being a juvenile 20-year-old. And having like these major life experiences that are going to shape her major adulthood. So yeah, I think I can see how situations shape her attitude and mentality in the moment, and then, you know, the growth from that is like her finally like, no, this is the way.
Yeah, I mean, outside of like a couple moments that, you know, felt a little strange, I do think that, you know, they didn't do anything that was really out of character. So with the exception of about halfway through the book, she started talking a little bit more, you know, cursing in ways that only the humans do, and it's blasphemous, like, you know, by the tree, or, you know, something like that. Yeah. That heralds back to the older religion. That felt a little jarring when it first happened, but I don't think that there was really anything to me that felt like out of place. Like, she set up the character, and everything that happened, happened like it should have. It wasn't like a character suddenly became someone different. True. What scenes or moments felt like the heart of the story, and how did it impact you?
I already talked about it. The bombing, like,
Yeah.
100%.
Yep.
Like, seeing how she reacted, that and her gut instinct being to go help. And that being like the realization that, the Guardian's way wasn't the right way. And, then there was a confrontation with Henry after that. And, seeing how she ran in, how she interacted, even though she didn't have her supplies, how she was just willing to basically give up her life to save people.
Yeah.
I think that was like the pivotal moment and like the dawning of what we're going to see Diem become.
Yeah, I 100% agree with the bombing. I also think it was really cool the way that the author did it, because, it happened during that argument in the family. And it's like the bombing came just as everything like crested with the family. So at the most heightened point of tension with the family, the bombing happens. And I think that if it was done intentionally, it was a really good way to build that tension up and then switch it and flip it so you felt a little bit disoriented, like people would at a time like that. So instead of like trying to tell you how disoriented Diem is, she kind of helps you feel that by building up that tension and then switching it to another tension. So I thought that was really, really well done. Surprises and twists. What twists and revelations surprised you the most? And why did it work so well?
Obviously, Diem being the queen at the end. That was probably the biggest surprise ever.
Yep, I agree. Yeah, that was the biggest surprise. And why did it? The other part of the question is, why did it work so well? And I'm not 100% sure. Outside of the fact that there were like some clues. Now that I'm looking back at it and talking to you, I can see them. Leading up to that, it was subtle enough that it really was a surprise. And
yeah, I think it worked so well because, I found myself asking, like, what if, things started working out, or if, my original thinking was Luther was going to be king and Diem would have his ear. And that, he would listen to her about the human side of things, even though we knew already that she wasn't completely human. Yeah. But that's how she was raised. She knew what was going on there. She knew, what needed to happen. And he was coming around to listening to that. So I think it worked so well with her being the queen because that was being set up.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. So this is the big one, and I think that we've touched a little bit on it throughout our chat. What are some lingering questions that you have?
What's her mom doing? I need to know. Like, what the questions that I still have is, what were Luther and Diem to each other in the past? Like, what is the scene that they keep seeing? I want to know that. Is it going to be like they're enemies and that was like them on a battlefield against each other, or were they together in some aspect or regard? Is that history going to repeat itself in what we're seeing pan out in the story? And the whole mom aspect. Obviously, what's going to happen with Diem's family now that there's been this major falling out?
Exactly. Yeah, I think the flame brute to me is still a little bit of a question. Luther and Diem, are they going to? Is there going to be some kind of falling out? And now that we're talking about it in retrospect, I can see other things like where they always talk about the shadow magic, light magic being the strength that normally dictates, and healing magic is weak. That's a good way to kind of underplay the final scene. Are they going to become enemies because he was anticipating ascending? And yeah, her mom, and just how everything's going to go. Like, how is everyone going to react to her becoming the queen because she's not descended?
I
So,
have one other question that's lingering.
what's that?
Was the king her father?
I was wondering that too, and how icky. Oh, well, it wouldn't be icky, would it? Because Luther is his nephew.
Yeah. And we don't know what twisted, weird, like, familiar laws they have about that sort of thing, but, like, was she, like, the best kept? Obviously, she was the best kept, like, crossbreed secret because they didn't kill her. But yeah, that's the other question, is who was her father? Is that person still around?
Yeah, and I need to correct myself because that would mean that they were cousins, and that's still icky. But
Well, I mean, look at Game of Thrones, Travis.
yeah, I know, right?
They could be the Targaryen.
And we know, like, oddly, so many people love that dynamic on the show.
It's fantasy, Trav. Come on.
Yeah, yeah, I'm kind of curious too about the lineage there, but I don't know if. Correct me, please, because I can't really remember if lineage even matters to who ascends the throne.
I'm not sure. That came up when they were talking. The assumption was Luther was going to descend because of his power. And I don't know, there was question whether or not it was going to the king's brother. So I'm not sure if it's power-based, which, if it's Diem, like, her power's been dampened for years. How do we even know what she's capable of? Or is it, something else? So they didn't really explain it too well that, we could make a clear determination of how lineage or succession takes place.
Yeah, it'll be interesting for sure to see. So everybody drop your comments in the chat below or the comment thread below. Let us know what you thought, now that the big reveal has happened with us, some of the thoughts you had around the end of the book as well. Coming up next month, we've already chosen our book club read, and that is Magic Lessons by Alice Hoffman. It's the first book in the Practical Magic series. And I think so. This isn't part of our questions or anything. What are you most excited about going in and reading this?
I am excited for this because growing up, Practical Magic was like one of my favorite movies ever. And I have so many memories of us just like, let's watch Practical Magic and dancing around as we were younger and like singing the coconut song. Being ridiculous. So it brings a lot of nostalgia to me. So I'm really excited to actually pick up the books.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I did many years back read Practical Magic and I enjoyed it. So being able to see more of the history of different family members and how that goes through is really exciting. It's also, I believe it's they're in the works for another, either a movie or a show on Practical Magic. So it'll be interesting to see like what parts of the story they may use there. But yeah, I agree. I'm like, Practical Magic is life. Like I love it, and I can't wait. Even though books are vastly different, it's still like getting you into that world and good witchy books.
Oh yeah. Geez, I think my mom would even be down for it because she loved the movie too.
Yeah, I think that we could get quite a few people reading with us, so that's exciting.
Awesome.
All right.
So stay tuned. We'll be posting the reading schedule and plan for the March book, and probably before the end of this week. So just keep an eye on our Instagram and social media platforms for the upcoming schedule.
And thank you, everyone, for going along with us in this little Everflame journey, and hope everyone is as excited as we are for magic lessons. All right, bye.
Bye.